You've been listening to the True Idaho News Podcast. Unfiltered news and opinion for the citizens of Idaho. Get more True News by visiting trueidahonews.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit trueidahonews.com/support. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Shane Class here with Creighton Knight on True Idaho News. Creighton Knight, you are with the Magic Valley Liberty Alliance in Twin Falls, Idaho, and you are also ran for a representative seat. Why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Shane. Thanks for having me on. It's a real honor, and I'm very grateful to be on today. So in 2022, I really felt a call to run for the legislature, and I ran for a legislative seat, House seat 24B. Came close, but didn't win. But another opportunity opened up after that to stay involved, and so I've been with the Magic Valley Liberty Alliance now since probably about June of 2022.
Great. So talk a little bit about Magic Valley Liberty Alliance and kind of what have you guys been doing lately, and I know what Magic Valley Liberty Alliance is, but for those out there that are watching, you've been extremely effective at affecting politics both locally and around the state, and I applaud you for that. But talk a little bit about what your mission is, and what your plans are, and what you've been up to, and what you've been doing.
Sure thing. I almost forgot to say that in addition to being on the MVLA, I also have a business, like a political communications and marketing business. And one of the things that we were able to do is I was able to work with Senator Glenita Zeiderveld's campaign as kind of like her media director and everything. I also worked with Clint Hostetler, state representative, and Josh Cole, our other state senator. So it was a lot of fun last year getting a chance to really work on those campaigns and help craft the messaging and help see all those guys win. That was really awesome. And then during the debates in the fall over Proposition 1, my company and we produced two commercials against Prop 1 that MVLA purchased and promoted, as well as Dorothy Moon and the Idaho Republican Party. So that was really cool. It was fun to be in the fight on the righteous side. It was a lot of fun doing that.
Talk a little bit about Prop 1 and what you guys were doing there.
Sure. So what we did with Prop 1 is for the campaign, what we did is,
First of all, Creighton, I'm sorry. So that those that may not know Prop 1, what was Prop 1, and then kind of what were you doing there?
Sure. So Proposition 1 was a ballot initiative for the Constitution to change the Constitution of the state of Idaho, and it was to bring what's called ranked choice voting to the state of Idaho. Now, ranked choice voting is something that's been championed by a lot of left-leaning groups. George Soros, other groups have funded that, and a lot of money came from out of state. And basically what the point is they try to go to states that are generally conservative or that are already liberal, and the ranked choice voting is one where you have to rank your vote. So if you only want to vote for one person, your ballot only gets counted once, and if you don't, but you have to vote for the Democrat or for everybody on the ballot, and they just do round and round and round afterwards to see who wins. And it's really convoluted, and it cost Sarah Palin in Alaska back in 2022. It cost her a congressional seat, whereas a Democrat was elected for the first time in like 40 years in Alaska once they adopted ranked choice voting. And in states like some of the other states where it takes place, it basically it's an opportunity for the left to be more institutionalized and to win more elections. So if you're a liberal and you're in the state of Idaho, and you don't want it to be conservative Republican in your representation, then you support ranked choice voting, and that's what we saw. What's interesting, man, is we were outspent. I mean, Dorothy Moon's got the numbers. She led the charge on the Republican side, obviously, as the chair, and did a really great job there. But we were probably outspent 3 or 4 to 1 at least. And most of that money came from that the pro Prop 1 people were from out of state, like um, from Chicago. There's a fella who was funding some of this, and he's like a firefighter union guy or something. Not a firefighter union guy. So he's basically a Democrat politician. Other people from out of state, the typical cast of dark money characters that like to influence small state politics. And if you think about it, and this is important for everyone who's watching today to understand where we sit as Idaho, is that if you think about it, we have a small population relative to other states like, say, Texas or Florida, New York, California, things of that nature, of about 2 million people. And we have a part-time legislature of 100 people, 100 people. And it's very easy for outside groups or even inside groups, big money, corporations, et cetera, to try to influence our elections and to try to change our state into a blue state. And the template we have for this is what happened in Colorado in the 90s and early 2000s. There's a really great movie out by Michelle Malkin. It's a documentary called The Rocky Mountain Heist. I totally invite anybody to encourage folks to check that out. And basically what they did is they took a small conservative rural state, and then they were able to flood it and to change it into a blue state. And we see now that Colorado is one of the crazy liberal states. So obviously we don't want that for Idaho. We want to change, or we want to keep our state free, and we want to keep our state conservative. So it was a lot of fun to defeat that Prop 1. And one of the cool things about it is, while the whole state, I think we were over 70% voted against Prop 1, in the areas where our commercials ran, we ran ahead of the state average. So we were up to like 82% in some of our areas. So hats off to all the voters for being informed and getting involved in that. That was really cool.
Yeah, it's that Prop 1 and the ranked choice voting, they really do a good job of misrepresenting what that was and what that is. And if that shows back up, I'm sure they're not going to give up on Idaho trying to get that pushed through. We'll probably see that come through again at some point. And the voters need to be aware. They brand that as a way to help more moderate, if you will, candidates get elected. But really what it is just a shift further and further to the left. And every step that they move further to the left is a step that it's really hard to get back. And we've seen that in Alaska, where once they enacted ranked choice voting, it really kind of destroyed politics in that state and turned them into a lot further left. Whether it actually goes over to the left where it's Democrat or Republican doesn't matter. What it helps is the rhinos get in.
Right. Here's an interesting little fact. In every state that ranked choice voting was on the ballot, every state defeated it, even blue states. Alaska, talking about how hard it is to get rid of, Alaska, the people did not want it, and so they voted. But because of the way that the count came down, it actually passed. It actually maintained barely. I think it was like maybe a couple thousand votes. It was a super close vote. So some may argue that enough people wanted to keep it. So that's the democratic process. I don't know if there was a ranked choice counting mechanism involved to help keep it, but it's kind of interesting. But here's something that's funny too, is another interesting factoid is in the Washington, D.C., they passed it. This in 2024, so no state passed it, but some cities and municipalities did, and it is present in a lot of municipalities across the country. Washington D.C., very liberal, very blue, poorly run city. It actually passed there, and the party that was opposed to ranked choice voting were the Democrats. And the reason why is they were concerned that their power would be diluted because a lot of Republicans and moderates would run and win under the ranked choice voting. So it's just kind of interesting how it shows that, even the liberals, it's all about power for them, right? If it takes away their power, they don't want it. So I just find it's pretty interesting. But yeah, we were super blessed to be a part of that, and it was fun to make those commercials and to have them broadcast on social media and digital ads and stuff. That was really great.
So speaking of groups that are trying to water down the true conservative movement that we see across America, we have some of that going on here in Idaho, and it's this group that's out there doing this. Let me see if we can pull this up. You've probably seen these on your street corner. This is at a street corner at what we call 5 Points at the intersection of Blue Lakes and Addison in Twin Falls, Idaho. And you know, I was kind of clowning this group a little bit. In fact, this was from one of my posts, just talking about they only had a few people out there this particular weekend, or weekday rather. But you guys have dug in a little bit. I think Senator Zeiderfeld dug in a little bit and sent some information over to you. And as we started digging in a little bit further, I was kind of shocked to find out. Well, I guess I'm not really shocked to find out. It's just par for the course that this group is funded by a lot of dark money. You want to talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. In politics, they call that astroturfing. It's, astroturf, fake grass. So astroturfing has been around for a long time, probably since the 80s or 90s, and maybe even since the 60s with the agitators and things of that nature. But basically what it is it's paid opposition. It's paid people paid to be outraged. Funny thing about the group Indivisible, I don't know if they've got other aligned groups. I don't know if it's under the same corporate structure. I haven't studied it, but there's if everybody remembers the protest that were organized in Trump's first 100 days and against Elon Musk and things like that in other states, in addition to Idaho. Well, I know for a fact that in other states, people were actually paid to be there at those events. It's pretty well documented. I believe Tucker Carlson had somebody on, or one of the podcasters had somebody on, and or might have been Rogan. One of them talked about how they answered an ad in the paper to make $20 an hour, and they'd got an extra $5 if they made their own sign. So basically, a great question that I always like to ask in politics. It's all about the smell test, right? If something doesn't pass the smell test, I trust in people and the voters, Americans. We have a certain, BS meter. If it doesn't pass the smell test, something doesn't seem right. So let me ask, or my ask for folks is think about and ask yourself the question: when you're driving through Twin Falls on a Thursday at noon or Thursday at 4 o'clock, and you see a bunch of able-bodied working people out there, or a number of them out there holding signs and protesting, all that stuff, ask yourself, are these people so committed that they would use a day off from work? Or might there possibly be some financial backing, or hell, they might be getting paid to do it. That's kind of, well, let's cut to the chase. They're probably getting paid. And so
Yeah.
that's always the question that I like to ask whenever I don't ever engage with those folks. But if I did, I would just go up and be like, hey, man, how much are you guys getting paid for this?
Well, especially in Twin Falls, Idaho. I mean, we're a conservative area. We're in the Magic Valley, and so that's a lot of effort for somebody who knows they're probably not going to move the needle much, to go stand out there during the week,
Yep.
during the weekdays, and let people drive by and honk, not in solidarity with them, what, honk at them, shake their fist. Probably I can't imagine. I haven't done it, but I imagine there's some people flipping them off and yelling, screaming, nasty things at them for being out there in this area. And I don't promote doing that. Stop by, have a conversation with them, absolutely, but let's keep it clean. But at the same time, well, like I said, that's a lot of effort for no
It
return.
is a lot of effort. You're right. And either they're super, super committed, which some of them could be, or they're getting paid, or some combination of the two. Because to underscore your point exactly, is that imagine standing out there and that the area that you live in voted over 70% for Donald Trump and is in support of Donald Trump. I mean, basically the people who voted for Kamala Harris were the ones standing on the corner, so it's kind of interesting. So part of me is like, if they're not getting paid, I say hats off to them, because obviously we believe in liberty. We believe in free speech. Free speech is political. Political speech is what the founders intended when they talked about free speech. So we support everyone's right to have free speech. And honestly, the free speech that has to be protected is the unpopular speech, because if it was popular, it wouldn't need to be protected. So love their rights. I'm glad they're exercising their rights, but more than likely, probably better than 70% chance that some or all those people are being paid to be out there.
Well, so let's dig in on that just a little bit. After you guys kind of brought that to my attention, I started digging in a little, and I found, first of all, that the group that's doing this is the Indivisible Project. And I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to bring this up big enough that everybody can actually read this along with me. because the Indivisible Project, this is from the Daily Signal, and they're talking about some of these organizations and how they've ranked in millions from the George Soros Foundation. And as I scrolled down, they're talking about Indivisible, and it's not a small amount of money that they picked up from them. When I blew this up here, but I lost it. Here we go. Indivisible's project has received at least $8 million from organizations under the umbrella of Open Society Foundations. And that's the funding network established by Hungarian American billionaire George Soros and now run by his son, Alex. According to IRS records, the Open Society Policy Center gave Indivisible $875,000 in the year ending in 2021, another 1.135 million the following year, and 3 million in the year after that. So they're sending a lot of money to this organization, and you have to ask why. They're only going to do it if it's effective, and they believe that it's going to be effective. And as I dug in a little bit further, let me see if I can find this. But this is what they stand for. What they stand for is this is their vision. This is from their website, by the way. It says, brought together by a practical guide to resist the Trump agenda. So that's what they want. They're a movement of thousands of group leaders and more than 1 million members taking regular, iterative, and increasingly complex actions to resist the GOP agenda. Now, read that again. To resist this, and I want you to hang on to this thought, everybody. To resist the GOP agenda, elect local champions, and fight for progressive policies. This is what they state their agenda is. And this is something that I found extremely disturbing, because look what this is off of their page, guys. Join Indivisible TFCID for an evening with Representative Lance Clow, a Republican out of Twin Falls, Idaho. And so they want to resist the Trump agenda. They want to resist the GOP platform. So what in the world is Lance Clow doing speaking at one of their meetings?
Yeah, so obviously can't speak for Lance. Don't know what's in his head. I would more curious as to why he decided to vote more like a Democrat this term than he did a Republican. I don't know. You know, obviously as representatives, I believe in and agree with the fact that you represent everybody, even the folks that didn't vote for you. So if he's making common cause with them on some of their agenda items, I would say that that's not good. If he's there to give a report on his record, I think that he's the kind of Republican that people like that are comfortable with, the people on the left. Why do I say that? Because Idahoan parents overwhelmingly support school choice, giving them the opportunity to take more an active role in their kids' education. Well, Lance Call voted against that. Glenita Zeiderveld voted for it. Clint Hostetler voted for it. Josh Cole voted for it. David Levitt voted for it. So we really, in last year's election, in last year's election, we brought up the record of the rhino. We call them rhinos because when you looked at like Linda Hartkin's record, you could hardly distinguish her record from a regular Democrat. Or Chanel Dixon, who Clint defeated. She voted to give welfare benefits to illegal immigrants because she was in bed with the big ag and the dairy lobby. I mean, she's bought and paid for. Everybody knows that. She's a lobbyist now, which I think is a much better fit for her. She doesn't have to pretend anymore. And then the same with Greg Lanting, and the liberal vote. So how it ties in with Lance is, I think Lance, I don't know what his deal is, but he certainly voted against the school choice. He also voted to protect or to give taxpayer money to fund teachers unions. I mean, those are California values, man. Those aren't Idaho values. So I don't exactly know why some of these guys are. Also, too, Lance Clow was rated as an F on the Idaho GOP platform. I mean, it's crazy. And obviously we're picking on Lance. He's our local guy and he needs to get right on his voting record. But blowing it up to the whole state, Shane, and this is something that people just need to know if they're trying to get tuned in to what's going on in Idaho politics. Our Speaker of the House, Mike Moyle, a quote unquote conservative Republican, he scored in the 60s, a 60 something percent, I think it's like 67% Idaho GOP platform alignment. So in other words, he ran as a Republican and is a Republican, and he's voted well in certain areas, but overall, against the GOP platform that he's supposed to, sign on to and uphold as a Republican, he scored in the 60s. I don't know about you, but when I was in school, man, the 60s was a D, and
Yeah.
that's our Speaker of the House. That's our Speaker of the House. That's leadership.
There's Lance Clow. I brought him up right there. He scored a 57.4%. And let's see here. Let's bring up. There's Mike. Yeah, with a 66.67%. And if you're not familiar with this, if you you can dig in a little bit deeper and watch the show that we did yesterday. We dove in just a little bit on who this Idaho GOP platform is that's doing this, their rating. And this isn't people that are looking at this. The way they did this is they took the Idaho GOP platform and plugged in what they stand for from their platform, what they say they stand for, into an AI. And then they put all the bills into that AI and said, which bills, how did these bills rank? Were they in alignment with the GOP platform, or were they opposed to the GOP platform? And after they did that, then they plugged those in and said, how did our lawmakers vote on those bills? Did they vote in favor of bills that are aligned with the GOP platform, or did they vote negatively on those bills? And it kicked it out, and that's how they got their ratings. So this is a very accurate model of how your representatives are voting. And I agree with you. It's pretty pathetic that that our speaker is receiving a D in a conservative state that is primarily Republican.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I think if you look at 2022 last year and talking back about like what the activities of the Magic Valley Liberty Alliance, what we did to help right size our representatives and their ideology. So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I know that the GOP platform scores for Linda Hartkin, who Josh Cole defeated, and I was very happy to work on his campaign to help in that effort. Hers was either a D or an F. Chanel Dixon was probably like a C or a D. Greg Lanting, he voted against protecting kids from he voted against the bill that would protect kids from explicit materials in the library. And the poll quote of the year was his quote where he said, a group of friends and I got together and read those books, and we found that they were like PG-13 at the worst. So if you can imagine a dude in his late 50s, early 60s, a state representative with his pals, I don't know what they're doing, but anyway, apparently they read a bunch of naughty books or supposedly naughty books, and they came away with a PG-13 rating. So anyway, just some of the ways that these guys voted. And what we did in the MVLA is we put together our voter guide, and we pride ourselves on bringing receipts. We do not tell people how to vote. We don't say you should vote this way, or they voted for the porn bill. It was called the porn bill. They voted against the porn bill to protect kids from porn in public libraries and school libraries. We just said, this is how they voted. You make the decision. And I tell you what, Shane, it was beautiful, man. When we first started delivering those and handing those out, those voter guides, it's just a simple, you can go on our website, mbla.org, and we're going to post it up there too. But basically, a lot of people might remember this. This is just a nice little spreadsheet that we did. And what I like about our group is, again, we're not about telling people do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Obviously, we're not unbiased. We obviously want to we have a conservative vision of freedom and liberty and for folks here in our state. But people saw that, man. They read it and they're like, who is this? One of the words, there was a Magic Valley, there was a Republican women's event, and somebody was looking at it, and she said, who's this Linda Hartkin? Where is she? Is she here? And she was looking around for her because her voting record was so horrible. So basically we did, man, is we just brought education to people. Hey, here's the facts. You draw your own conclusions. You vote according to your values. Here's what it is. And what's really nice, man, is that we were able to hold those folks accountable. And the voters chose, we didn't choose, the voters chose to bounce out those people who are liberals. And so, that's what we want to keep doing, because what the GOP platform score shows, man, is that GOP platform is created by the grassroots. Dorothy Moon goes on KLIX every Tuesday and talks about that. It's a grassroots driven agenda. So regular folks taking time out of their days and weekends to go promote an agenda, a platform, a Republican conservative platform. Well, when people are scoring a D, when the Speaker of the House is scoring a D, that shows unbiased. It's a mathematical equation. It shows that he is out of step with his base, the very base that he says
Yeah.
he supports. Lance Clow voting against, his record was what he get, a D or a C or a D? No, he got an F.
You got
So
an
Lance
F.
Clow is a Republican receiving Republican money from the Twin Falls County Republican Party and other Republican groups, and he has an F on the platform. My contention, I'm not speaking for MVLA, I'm speaking from my own opinion, is I just wish that these people would just have the stones to just re-register as Democrats and run as a Democrat. Now, we know why they won't do that, right?
Yeah, there's
They
no way
won't
they
do
would
it
ever get
because-
elected if they ran
That's
as a
right.
Democrat. So they run as a Republican, and then they get scores like this. And that's
right.
Lance Clow at 57.14%. And I mean, I don't know about you, but in a state that is conservative, as a conservative voter, a B is barely passable. And so I think the scale is a little, it's skewed towards how we would grade things in school. But as a conservative, I'd say a B is a C and a C is an F. I mean, that's
Right.
just, you're not doing anything to help the conservative values of Idaho if only half the time you're voting in favor, and that's your F that you're getting. And that's what Lance Clow has got, a 57.14%. So barely half the time he's voting in line with conservative values. That means half the time he's voting against conservative values.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a term for that. It's called Democrat. That's
Yes.
the term. That's the name. So everybody just buck up, man up, and just be a Democrat. If you want to be a Democrat, if you want to be a Democrat, run as a Democrat. And I tell you what, the Democrats who actually do run, in our races here locally, and we are getting Democrats fielded, and they said in 2022 they were going to field an opponent in every race, and I think they got real close to doing it. I tell you what, my hat's off to them. At least they're honest about what they believe. They're not gaslighting us. They're saying, hey, this is what I stand for. What was interesting is last year at CSI, they did a forum with all of the candidates, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. And there was a Democrat who was running against, I think it was against Glenita, but this was during the primary. So you had Glenita, you had her primary opponent, Alex Caval, who was a total rhino, bought and paid for by the special interest to run against Glenita. And the Democrat, compared with all the other representatives, because they're all up at the same time, the Democrat on some issues was more conservative than the quote unquote Republican challengers to the conservatives or the establishment Republican. It's crazy, man. Absolutely crazy.
That's extremely concerning.
Yeah. So, on the positive side though, man, is on the other side of the current GOP platform rating, our very own Clint Hostetler from my district, 24, he is ranked number 1, I believe, for adhering, his votes adhere to that. All of the Magic Valley conservatives, so Glenita Zeiderveld's up there, Josh Cole's up there, David Levitt are up there. So, hats off to the voters in the Magic Valley, because we went from some of the most liberal Republicans to now the most aligned Republicans, aligned with the will of the people. And that's really what a representative democracy is, right? Isn't it supposed to be, they represent our will, not the will of the special interest, which is how business has been run in Boise for probably 40 years. It's about aligning with the will of the people. And so I'm super happy that our guys now have been aligned with that, and they score the best.
Well, and Greg Landing, let's talk about that just a little bit. They one of the books that you mentioned that he was in favor of keeping in our libraries and in our schools had images in it that were so R-rated, even though they were sketched. Okay, they weren't photographs, But they were very explicit, so much so that I recently posted an image out of that, and I had to
Sure.
cover up the parts of the I'm going to be very careful here, sexual acts that were taking
Right.
place. I had to cover that up because there was penetration, and that's not something I'm having a hard time skirting around the edges in describing this image. And I'm not in the classroom. I'm 52 years old and at the end of the month here. So this was absolutely. I find this appalling enough that I can't even describe it here, much less what we're allowing our kids to see in schools. And people like Lanning want to keep that in there. And
That's right.
so, and then you have, I don't want to shine a whole lot of light, but then you have Lucy Wills coming out in favor of these three that were voting in favor of keeping this in the schools. And so this is the kind of representation that we used to have in the Magic Valley. And hats off to Magic Valley Liberty Alliance, hats off to the voters that got involved, because here's what we ended up with. We ended up with a lot of our Twin Falls and Magic Valley legislators that went from being that kind of legislator over to David Levitt here we got Clint Hostetler was number one. We have David Levitt at number two. We have Josh Cole at number three. Skim down here a little bit, and what is this? 3, 6, 7, 8 is Glenita Zetterfeld. So hats off to these folks for coming in there and winning the race and holding strong to their values, by the way. And this is something that I find disturbing. We replace so many of our quote unquote Republicans, okay, that were like Lanting and Hartgen and Dixon, that were Republican in name only. We replaced them with true conservatives, and this happened all across the state. And we were taking our Senate. We only had one representative in the Senate that was worth beans, and that was Christy Zito. And we gave her some added support. We added a lot of people to the Senate. We added a ton of people into into our House, but then look what happened. Now we thought we had a really good stronghold, but now there's a little bit of infighting that's happening in there. But we're finding that some of those people we put in there they spoke a good story, but when push came to shove and they wanted seats, they wanted a seat at the table, so they wanted some of those chair seats. Now they're bending. And I get it. So they like to use the term compromise. Well, we have to compromise. We should compromise a little bit. Okay, when we're having a conversation about what we ought to have for dinner, when you and your wife are discussing dinner, it's okay to compromise. But when you're compromising on values, I have a problem with that. And we have some people that are now compromising on values and saying, well, we have to compromise because that's the right thing to do. No, if you have a true paradigm, and that's your core values, you can't compromise on values. You can compromise on whether we should spend $1 million or 900,000, but not compromise on whether we should spend $1 million putting books like this out into schools or not. And that wasn't a number. I'm just throwing hypotheticals out there. But those are things we can't do because we have core values that are critical to our GOP platform remaining GOP.
That's right. That's exactly right. So it's interesting about the compromise deal. That is a term, like you said, gets thrown around. That's because most reasonable people like us and your viewers and just folks, all of us going about our daily life, yeah, we're having a compromise. I like what you said, dinner. I prefer beef. My wife wants chicken. It's cool. Let's do chicken. I'm fine with that, or whatever. Like we all can agree. In our work relationships, you have to compromise. But what is different in politics is, to your point, which is that they're compromising on value. So you talk about, like, should we spend $1 million or should we spend 900,000? The problem and is that the compromise goes one way. The compromise is based usually in the premise of let's grow government. And then the compromise becomes, how much are we going to grow government? And that's not Republican. That's not conservative. That's uniparty. That's Democrat. Government growth is good. But the moderate Republicans are like, well, I agree with that, but it just needs to be run by Republicans. No, big government, regardless of who it's being run by, is inefficient, it's expensive, and it eventually gets so large that it just seeks its own way and seeks its own values. Case in point, Washington D.C. Does anybody watching today, or even regular folks, believe that the Senate and the House or the federal bureaucracy is actually looking out for people in Idaho or even in wherever? The answer is no. Nobody believes that. Why? It's gotten too big and it becomes its own monster that basically exists. We know bureaucracy exists to exist. It is almost like a living organism that seeks to protect and enhance and grow. And so
That's
here,
right.
going back to Idaho, we miss out on opportunities because, and I mean, I think the opportunity is in front of us. I'm not a doom and gloomer. I'm a positive guy. I wouldn't be doing this, but we're missing out on some opportunities when you look at, for public policy, when you're looking at, school choice. We finally got something, and it's watered down. I mean, it's not Arizona, which is a purple state. It's not Florida, which used to be a purple state and is now a red state. It's not Tennessee, which is a pretty solid red state, but not as conservative as Idaho. All these states that are less conservative than us have more conservative, effective public policy. In Idaho, our leaders, not our voters, but our leaders are still debating on, should we grow government by 1 million and add more bureaucracy, or should we only grow it by 900,000 and add a little less bureaucracy? Other states they don't operate that. And let me say this too. A lot of this, man, it starts at the top. Brad Little is a rhino.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, he scored an F from the Idaho Freedom Foundation, by the way.
Yeah.
An F.
Yeah. And and we don't even know like if he's like even really in charge. It's probably the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, of which he used to be president of, by the way.
Yeah, 20 years
So
that he was involved with them.
exactly. So, there's all sorts of rumors about how those guys are really the puppet masters. I don't know. I don't want to go there, but when you look at the policies and how he's grown government by over 55% in his short tenure. And here's the thing, and for the new folks who are moving here from blue states and they're looking for a conservative home, welcome. We love it. Get engaged. You guys saw what it looked like when Republicans fell asleep at the wheel in California, in Oregon, in Washington, and all these other blue states. And you saw what happened. Well, we were in danger of that till about 4 years ago when the conservative movement and the grassroots began to rise up and peacefully rise up and just begin to bring light and shed light on how people were voting. But here's the thing is, Brad Little's probably going to run. My understanding is he's going to run for governor, and we don't know if there's anybody who's going to really oppose him. But here's the thing for everybody. When Brad Little puts on a cowboy hat or uses a chainsaw in a video, just be very, very careful. Be wary in Idaho of liberal Republicans in cowboy hats, because what they do is, to me, Shane, it just shows how they disrespect and don't. Yeah, they just disrespect the voters. They think, well, if I put on a cowboy hat and go out on a ranch and do a couple of shots, then people are going to vote for me. And you know what? Up until about maybe 4 years ago, that held true. Mike Simpson does the same thing. Mike Simpson's a big liberal up in Washington, D.C. Hard as crap to get rid of that guy. Because there always seems to be a third person, a third candidate who that no one knows, but mysteriously appears out of nowhere to run and divide up the vote. So Mike Simpson's won the last 2 elections with less than 50% of the vote because of some random dark horse that comes in and splits the conservatives. Anyway,
They've been doing this a long time. They're smart.
Yeah, that's right. So Mike Simpson will put on a cowboy hat. Oh, and then they'll shoot firearms too. I mean, I love that about our state, that, you should have firearms in a video. I think that's great. But I don't like it when people are using it as political props. And then whenever they win election, then they get up there and then they govern as Democrats. Really interesting point. I ran into the governor one time in the Salt Lake City airport. And you know what, man? He was not wearing a cowboy hat. I looked. There's no cowboy hat. He was wearing a blue suit. He looked like a banker. So just remember that whenever his people. And the other thing too, Shane, is I don't want to give away any secrets, but there's an old playbook here in Idaho, an old political playbook, and it is so obvious. And there's a group, I forget the name of the group, but it's this rhino outfit out of Salt Lake, I think it is. And they're big into the moderates. Maybe they're not rhinos, but they're moderates. And so they support all these moderate candidates, and they run this boilerplate campaign. And so here's a couple of key words to listen to and to lean into if you hear it. Number one, I support local control, local control, local control. That is a little. It's almost like a tick that these moderates have, and basically what that means is it says I don't want to get involved in sticky issues. Like, for example, the porn bill, right? Every single one of the Republicans, so that would who voted against protecting our kids from pornography in the library, that would be Steve Miller, that would have been Chanel Dixon, that would have been Linda Hartkin, that would have been Greg Lanting. Those four people, they all said, well, local control. Why did you not vote for that? When the voters confronted them, they said, oh, well, local control. What does that even mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it means that, well, we don't want government to be involved. Yet they grow government on the other hand. They want government involved in everything.
And
That's who
by the
their
way,
lobbyists are.
what is the local doing to control any of this anyway? They're not. It never happens. So they
Exactly.
use these buzzwords, but then they don't go to the city council and say, "Hey, okay, local control. We need to get this out of our schools." They just say, "Let's get local control," and then they let we have a rather liberal city council anyway, which
That's right.
that's a whole nother
Library
story.
board. Yeah, all those boards are run by fellow travelers. Well, and so they say, well, just run for run for the library board or run for city council, whatever. Well, yeah, that is a way to do it. We have a representative republic. That's a great way to get involved. But in all honesty, man, the moms who are too concerned, who are very concerned about their kids not being exposed to pornography in their schools and not having to worry about that, they're probably pretty busy, probably working, raising a family, trying to get kids homework, help them get their homework and everything, and get into all the sports events. They don't have time to be on the library board, and a lot of people honestly don't have the inclination for that. The point is the whole local control argument blows up under just a little bit of scrutiny. For example, let's suppose that a liberal city council, like in Eastern Idaho or something, or in Boise, let's say Boise, Mayor McLean's a crazy liberal. Let's just say that she says, I want to, pot is now legal in the city of Boise. It's legal. Now, if you use, and she says, and whenever the Republicans, who should rightfully oppose that, because we don't, I don't support that. MVLA does not support that. We've come out against legalization of marijuana. But the Republicans who preach local control say, well, you can't do that, state law. Well, local control. The drinking age in the state of Idaho is 21, regardless of where you live, regardless of your locality. Marijuana is illegal, and you can't buy alcohol legally unless you're 21 or older. So if we're going to hold the local control, then every municipality would get a chance to enact their own laws on that.
Well, and
They don't believe that.
we
They don't
see
believe that.
this. There was a place called to that point. There's a place. There's State Line Road runs right down the state line between Texas and Arkansas. And in Texarkana, Arkansas, one side of that road is a dry county and the other side of that road is in a wet county, meaning you can buy alcohol on one side, the other side you can't. Now, how sensible is that? So you can just walk across the street and one side is lined with bars and the other side has no bars on it whatsoever. And that's kind of your local control idea. Now those are two different states, but that's what would happen in a state is you just drive down the line between Boise and Meridian, and one side would be you'd have teenagers just crossing the line to go in there and go into the bars if they allowed 18-year-olds to drink on one side and 21 on the other. It raises a lot of confusion. There needs to be some cohesion in the law.
Yeah. That's right. So yeah, and there's certain things that are just non-negotiable. Like, I mean, personal safety for individuals. Like assaulting somebody is not, it's not specific on jurisdiction, right? It's statewide. Why? Because that's a natural right. We could get into that philosophy of it being a natural right. But my point is that everyone has a right to be safe, and no one has the right to come in and just cold cock somebody in the face because they're having a bad day, right?
That's right.
There's going to be consequences. Well, local control. No, there's certain things that all of us agree upon that have to be done. And the other thing too is basically in the face of evil, and it is evil when you show books that instruct children how to perform oral sex on each other. That was one of the pictures that had to be blurred out.
That's the one I had to blur out.
Yeah, and here's what they wanted us to believe. They want us to believe there's nothing to see here. There's no big deal, no big deal, no big deal. But whenever people wanted to testify in the Senate against the bill and to show those pictures, the Senate would not allow them to show that picture because why? Minors might be watching this. Okay, so you're asking me to hold two opposing thoughts in my head and say it's the same thing. Either it is or it isn't offensive. Well, it's not offensive. There's nothing to see here. No reason to vote for this. Local control, local control. And then, well, okay, well, let's show people what we're trying to protect. No, you can't show that. Why? Well, we got to protect people against that.
Well, let's really
So
drill
that's
down
the
into
logic.
this.
That's the logic. If there is any in
Imagine
there.
if you left this one to local control, and so here's what happens. Exactly what just happened in Boise. The legislator came out with their bill about flags. Now, let me just say this about the flag bill really quick. When you fly a flag, that means that you are displaying that the people that are under that flag are in submission to the laws and the rules of that flag, what that flag represents. So if you're underneath the state flag, then you are submitting your authority to the state of Idaho. If you're under the flag of the city of Boise, then you're submitting to the laws of the city of Boise and what the city of Boise has to stand for. So is the city of Boise now stating that you're under the laws and the rules of the LGBTQ community? So that's my issue with that. But this is what we have. So now we have Boise doing that. What have we seen happen in Boise? We're rallying. Now all of a sudden you have more LGBTQ people flocking to Boise because that is what's happening there. So now let's take this to the next level. Local control. So the city of Twin Falls, where these people live, they allow this kind of pornography, LGBTQ trans pornography, to be allowed into the schools and into the libraries in their books. But all of the surrounding towns don't have it. Where do you think all the pedophiles are going to move, guys? Let's just be real. Where do you think the perverts and the pedophiles are going to congregate? They're going to congregate where the local laws allow them to groom the children to be the kind of people that they want them to be because that's what they want in their life. That's not what Twin Falls stands for, and that's not what the state of Idaho stands for. And I'm appalled that we had representatives that wanted to stand for that.
What's really cool is so many of the ones who voted, not just in our area, but some of the other representatives who got bounced last year, got defeated by the voters. That was one of the big issues. But I think what's interesting is that, and I think it's an interesting point, is that especially like with the votes, like Chanel Dixon, she voted in an election year that everybody knew was going to have, if you were paying attention, you knew how the country felt about illegal immigration. And here she voted like in February or March, late into the year, when it was clearly election season, voted to give a medical care and other care to illegal immigrants. Well, what does that show you? That shows you that she in particular was so out of touch with her voters. Where is she getting her information? In other words, in what information stream are you hooked into where you would believe that that's good public policy in a conservative Republican state in a year when that's the biggest issue in the national politics, right? Well, it shows you that the information stream you're getting is the whispers in the ear and the slaps on your back and the money that you're getting thrown into your campaign coffers from special interests. And that's honestly the way that Idaho has been run for a long time. And I'm not saying we're unique in that every state has lobbyists, et cetera, but the amount of control that those guys can exert over our legislature is pretty amazing. It's very easy to dominate the media market in Idaho. For example, is a huge blessing back on the Prop 1 thing. It was a huge blessing that we were able to defeat that. It was so bad on its face that we were probably outspent 4 to maybe even some people think up to 10 to 1 on that. Well, it's nothing for an outside organization. Like you look at the state of Florida, for example, where my family lives, to run for the state legislature, you probably have to raise about $250,000 to win a House seat. Here in the state of Idaho, it's usually about 50. So what is that? Why is that? Well, because it's a big state. It's a various media markets. Media markets are expensive. Well, you compare that with Idaho with only 2 million people. An out-of-state person could drop $250,000 and they could influence 5 or 6 races with that much money. So it's a real credit to the voters that they didn't fall for that Prop 1 thing. When I worked on Glenita's campaign, we were probably outspent 3 or 4 to 1 by all these outside special interests and everything, and they threw everything they could and made up stuff when they ran out of other stuff against her. And what was really cool is the voters just know Glenita. They know she's a quality person. They know that she has good intentions and cannot be corrupted, and is not, and it stood to be courageous against a lot of opposition, and they
That's
told her, they
because
said,
she
we're
has
going to,
principles.
that's right. That's right. She has principles and she's not afraid. And she knows that one day she's going to answer to God face to face for how she conducted herself. And so she is very humble and very honored by that, by the trust that the voters have given to her to win. So that
Well,
was,
and go ahead. Yeah, I'll let you finish, then I'll jump in
so
here.
so yeah, the finished thought is that the grassroots, and I guess the message is not to be afraid of like all this outside money per se. I think what it is hats off to the grassroots, hats off to the people who are watching, who probably all voted. They're probably high propensity voters, why they watch. For them, for getting their friends out to vote, getting their families out to vote, for sharing things on social media and holding these elected officials accountable. Hats off, guys, because you guys defeated millions of dollars from left-wing organizations
Yeah.
that you can't buy Idaho politics every day or every year. And we want to make sure that it's harder and harder for liberal groups to purchase Idaho politicians.
And so, speaking about Glenita, and we've become friends over the years as we work together to start Magic Valley Liberty Alliance with a couple other just wonderful people, and she has been she's a very strong woman. She's a very strong person, but in having late conversations with her, it is exhausting to be the one that is in the few. There's about 8 of our legislators that are just very strong-willed, that are holding the line, that are holding our legislature, frankly, back from moving further to the left, and they're holding the line from our government growing in Idaho. They're holding the line from more taxes and the things that are just damaging. I mean, our taxes have been gone up 55% over the last 5 years. The spending rather has, which means taxes. I mean, it's either taxes or more federal government, which is still your taxes. Right. It just goes to a different place. Do you send it to Boise, Idaho, or do you send it to Washington, D.C. so that they can reallocate your money and give it back to Idaho and use some of it for whatever they want to? But I kind of liken it to, if you've ever seen a little girl that's walking a big dog, and the big dog wants to go everywhere, and she's trying to keep control of it. And that's what these 8 are fighting day in and day out, is they're fighting to keep that big bulldog from running loose. And so you can imagine, you can go in there in your first few months. Okay, this is great. We're going to make some waves. We're going to make, we're going to toe the line. We're going to do a great job. But then keep trying to hang on to that bulldog for year after year. And it is exhausting. And these people need our support. They need us to send them letters and send them emails and make the phone calls and say, hey, thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate you holding strong. We appreciate you doing this. They need that encouragement, because we need these people to keep fighting the fight. But more than that, more than just the platitudes, we need people to get involved and start calling the other legislators and saying, hey, what are you guys doing over here? And why are you speaking badly about the only good people that we really frankly have? I don't want to say the only good people. There's a lot of good people, but the only good legislators, the ones that are truly voting the way that they ought to be voting. There's some good people in there that I like as an individual. I wish they'd get the heck out of politics. They have no business being in politics. We could go down and have a cup of coffee and talk about the State of the Union, but I don't want them casting their vote.
They need to start spending their winters in Arizona instead of in Boise.
That's right. that's exactly right. Creighton, we've got probably 5 or 6 minutes here. I really want to talk about MVLA for a moment, and what do you have in store for us coming up this next year, and what are the big targets that the people can help? How can we help you to keep doing what you're doing?
Well, first of all, we would like to see somebody step up and run against Lance Clow, so that we have a good conservative to run in that seat. If Lance retires, the local establishment has a good, very compliant rhino waiting in the wings. You can be sure of that. But it would be nice to have a good grassroots oriented candidate to run against him who would score a high GOP platform, i.e., aligned with their voters' values in the legislature. Some of the other things we have going on is we have our voting guide, our voter, well, not our voter guide, our voting record from this first session of this year's legislature. And I believe that's going to be on I believe it's already on our website, mvla.org. And it should be up there. We also have a barbecue on Western Day. So on Saturday after the parade, we have a barbecue over at a park nearby downtown. I can't remember the name of the park right now, but if you go to our website, it will be announced. It's on our website as well, mvla.org, and it'll be right there. Invite everybody to come out. We're making food. So, after a parade, you got the kids are eating all that candy, so they got to have some protein to balance all the sugar out. So come on down to the park and participate in the event. We're also going to have some other events throughout the year. Honestly, too, man, a lot of it is we're trying to support some of these candidates and any kind of financial help that folks can give directly to either the candidates or to to organizations like MVLA would be really cool. It helps. So we've got quite a few things coming up. It's a little quiet right now. Obviously, it's not an election year, but our mission is to impact, educate, and restore. So we want to educate, and really education from the MVLA organization side is really to educate people that, don't tell them how to vote, let them decide, but we just want to let them know how their representatives are voting. So yeah, I'd love to have them come out to the picnic after Western Days and then go check out our website because we post new events on our website all the time. And so I know we've been planning some dates throughout the summer, maybe 3 or 4 events throughout the summer and then into the fall as well.
Yeah, that's mvlibertyalliance.org.
My bad.
I know you
Thank you.
get put on the spot like that, and it's I do it myself. It's so easy to. But
Well, I'm glad you pulled that up. Thank you for fact checking that. Heck yeah, because I'm probably gonna get some nasty grams from my peeps on Signal now that I gave the wrong email.
Yeah, we got your back. mvlibertyalliance.org, and yeah, so you also have those events that are up there. Magic Valley Republican Women will host the president and founder of Health Freedom Defense Fund on May 21st. That's at Pebble Ponds Golf Course in Filer. Looks like on Saturday, May 31st is the spring barbecue. And so that's with Rep Clint. We were talking about these reps: Clint Hostetler, Josh Cole, David Levitt, Glenita Zeiderfeld. Here's an opportunity to go out and meet these people, ask them questions. These are they'll be there doing presentations. You can actually hear from them, and I know that they are more than happy to have you come up and shake their hand and ask them questions. Ask them the tough questions. But that starts. There's a potluck that starts at 2:00. It looks like. And then Saturday, June 14th. So Magic Valley Liberty Alliance is very, very active in I'm so proud of what they've done. Like I said, I was part of the co-founders of that. And then with what I'm doing here, just trying to do all of it at once is too much. And I felt like somebody needs to be this voice. There's such we need more conservative people doing what I'm doing right here, by the way, out around the state. We need more people that are just sharing the truth and getting the word out. And so if I'm just going to say, if you think that you have the skills that it takes to do that, reach out to me. I'd love to kind of help you get started and give you some guidance on what you can do in that respect. We need more conservative voices. I'm not out here in competition with anybody. This is a team of people that are trying to affect conservative politics in Idaho. But again, Bridge to Divide workshop, it looks like you have going on at Eastside Baptist Church. So there's a lot, that picnic coming up in September. Last year, the first year, if I recall, there was about 100 people there that showed up. Last year, there were over 400. This year, it sounds like Raul Labrador has said that he's going to attend. I don't know if he's going to speak or not, but it sounds like he's going to come out and attend it. It's become a big event. I'm going to be out there. We're setting up a set of speakers so that everybody has a chance to speak. My better half is going to be cooking up some great food out there. So it's kind of potluck style, but the main course she's going to be doing, and she is a wonderful chef. You'll enjoy that. So Yeah, make sure to come out and attend those things and get involved with Magic Valley Liberty Alliance and ask them how you can get involved and help. They need more boots on the ground. It's the boots on the ground that's breaking the dollars that are being flooded into the states. Any last thoughts that you have before we end this out?
Well, I just thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate that, and just the encouragement I have to I want to share with everybody is obviously we want to be happy warriors, right? I mean, a positive message is more compelling than a negative. It's more important to know that what we stand for. We stand for personal liberty. We stand for God-given rights. We stand for religious liberty. We stand for the dignity of all humanity. You know, those are some basic things that we can, and free speech, the Constitution, we can, those are all the things that we can rally around and that are very positive. So the positive message I want to leave with all the folks out there is it doesn't matter how much money people spend. If you get involved, if you go knock on a couple of doors, if you send 10 or 15 or 20 or $50 to a candidate, you have an outsized influence. They cannot by this state as long as everybody gets involved. And look at what you guys did in the Magic Valley in 2022. You guys bounced 3 liberals who were pretending to be Republicans, and you replaced them with people who now score at the top of the GOP scorecard. So keep up the good work, everybody out there. And it's going to be fun this next year. And we're looking forward to sending our conservatives back and then sending some more with them so that we can really affect positive change in our state. That's going to be a blessing to every citizen.
So, and I know this is true Idaho news, and we have people that are all around the state watching this. And I know we did a lot of talking about what's happening in the Magic Valley, but I wanted to highlight Magic Valley Liberty Alliance and what they are doing in the Magic Valley and how effective they've been, because we have another group that is getting started over in eastern Idaho. And if you took a look at the last 2 videos that we've done, we showed a map around the state of Idaho of Idaho Freedom Foundations, that what the average ranking of the legislators are in those particular areas. And eastern Idaho is just a big blob of red. And on that map, what red means is that the average scorecard of those legislators in that area is red. It's getting an F. And so there's a desperate need for a Magic Valley Liberty Alliance type group over in eastern Idaho. And I'm going to try to get the gentleman that's getting that started on here to talk about what they're doing, so you can learn how to plug in and how you can get be as effective as MVLA has been here in the Magic Valley. And we need those groups over in eastern Idaho. We need them in central Idaho. We need them in northern Idaho. And if you're starting a group like that, or if you already have a group like that that I'm not already aware of, please reach out to me. I'd love to have you come on True Idaho News and talk about what you're doing in those areas. And maybe we can get all of these groups together, because here's what happens. Even though Magic Valley Liberty Alliance, they brought forth their candidates in the Magic Valley, they are now affecting politics across the state. And the governor spends a lot of time in the Magic Valley, at least he used to, with those legislators here, because this area affects politics around the state. But they need more help. They need help from eastern Idaho. They need help from western Idaho. They need help from central and northern Idaho. They need to have great legislators in there so that they can change the course away from growing government and taking your freedom and your money away, and set it back to the Idaho that we love, that people are coming here, fleeing areas like Portland, fleeing areas like California, and fleeing areas like Washington. They're coming to Idaho because Idaho is great. We are a great conservative state, and we need to keep it that way. So please get involved with people like Magic Valley Liberty Alliance in your area. And if you don't already have one, I guarantee you reach out to Creighton, you reach out to MVLA over here, they'll open the playbook and say, this is how you do it. And they'll support you in any way that they can.
Yeah, that's right. They can reach out to us, and we're more than happy to link arms with anybody who wants to do the same thing. And give shout out to Stop Idaho Rhinos up north, John Hyde and his gang. I mean, they do a bang up job. Citizens Alliance of Idaho, Matt Edwards, those guys, personal friend, great job. Of course, the Freedom Foundation. It's all of us working together, man. That's how we affect the positive change. And the same battles of the uniparty, Trump versus the uniparty, that take place in DC, is same battles that are taking place here in Idaho. So we know how people feel about where people in Idaho stand on that. They stand 70% with President Trump. So let's get some legislators up there who will stand along with the people and defeat that uniparty.
Yeah, and on Monday, everybody, make sure you tune back in at 9 a.m. Maria Olson Nate, that is Ron Nate, the president of Idaho Freedom Foundation's wife, is going to be coming on, and she is working with the 8 legislators that we keep highlighting, and we're going to talk a little bit about what they've done and what the future looks like in Idaho politics. So don't miss that episode, 9 o'clock, right here, True Idaho News. Thank you again, Creighton Knight, and for all the hard work that Magic Valley Liberty Alliance is doing. And thank you for taking the time to come on to see me.